And in aviation, you can't just, it's not like driving a car, you get in, turn the key, and you go. You can stay off for 10 years, you get in, turn the key, and go. You gotta stay in practice as a pilot. If you don't stay in practice, the penalty is death, right?
Yeah.
So I was up doing my normal practice stuff, routines, just to make sure my skills were current.
You're ready to be playing for the day?
Yeah, I rent by the hour, yeah.
Okay. Just playing around Barbados?
Yeah, it's around Barbados, mostly off the East Coast. Then came around the West Coast to land.
We went around the East Coast, and then we came to the West Coast. So what happened then?
Well, I came into land, I shot an instrument approach, an ILS approach into runway 9 here at Grantley. Landed, did a touch and go, and came around, right turn out over the ocean to come back around for another landing.
Oh, that was like you were practicing?
I was practicing, yeah, that's because that's the name of the game. It's practice, practice, practice. That's what pilots need to do to stay proficient.
So you did in fact land at the airport?
Yeah.
And took back off again?
Took off again, came around for another landing, and on my second time around, before I got to the airport, I started to feel like I was low in altitude. And then quickly determined that the engine had lost power, and then decided I didn't have enough altitude to make the airport. So I picked out a farmer's field in the bog and let the peppers slow me down. It was a field of peppers. I understand, I don't know for sure, it looked like tomatoes to me, but somebody who knows better said it was peppers.
Okay. Could you explain, I want to take it step by step, as your moment when you decided that this is not going to end right for you right now?
Oh, okay. Well, it may be a little complicated, you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. When I was coming around to land, I was 90 degrees to the runway, heading towards the airport from the south, right? And I determined that the aircraft, I'd already configured the aircraft. I got permission from the tower to report when I turned final on the runway, and I configured the aircraft for landing. Power was set, flaps was set, everything was set up, and the aircraft was just coming in on a nice glide in. And it got to the point where I started to feel that I was getting a little low, which happens depending on the wind. But it was a little too low. So I said, something's wrong here. So I was going to go around and do it again. So I applied full power. I enriched the mixture on the engine, the fuel mixture, air mixture on the engine, and then I applied carburetor heat to get rid of any potential carburetor icing, and nothing worked. So I called the tower and I said, Mayday, I have an emergency. And I went back to my business of trying to get the engine started, and nothing. I called them back and said, I'm not going to make the airport, I'm going into a farmer's field, and I started my emergency checklist. Turn the fuel off, right? Get the power off, did all the things I'm supposed to do to check. Turn left towards the farmer's field and set up for a final approach. At that point, I noticed the flaps were not down. And I always put the flaps down way back earlier. So somehow, maybe in the excitement, my excitement, whether they got knocked up, the lever got hit, and they got up. So I put them down again, put the flaps down again. Set up the approach right to the tomatoes field. A lovely landing approach, just the way I always do it. And I look ahead of me, and there's electrical wires. So, but fortunately, I'm set up for a good approach. So I just lifted up the aircraft a little bit in altitude, sailed over the wires, and came back down in my glide for the approach. Touchdown, a lovely touchdown, nice and soft. It would have been a good landing on the runway. And the tomato plants, or whatever plants they were, started to slow the airplane down. But he had his furrows the same direction I'm going. When I finally got to the end of his field, and the next field had the furrows going across my front. When the nose wheel came down and hit one of the furrows, it flipped the plane over on its back. And then, next thing I realized, I'm stuck in here. My feet were weird, I'm in the seatbelt, I'm upside down. So I got my feet into the front of the airplane, undid the seatbelt and dropped out of the seat. And by that time, 2 farmers had come up. Lovely men, thank you. Thank them so much. And they saw I was awake and lucid. They said, you need any help? Lucid. And I said, yeah, could you open the door for me? because the door was up against the farmer's furrow. So we pulled, I pushed a little bit, they pulled a lot and got the door open. And I started to crawl out. And they said, "You need help?" I said, "No, I can crawl out." But they didn't listen to me. They grabbed me by the shoulders and drugged me out of the airplane, stood me up, and I was able to walk on my own steam, thank goodness, with their help, to their house, just across the road.
What was the response from the tower back to you?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if they said anything or not. Oh, they did ask me if I wanted assistance, trucks or whatever. And I said, "Well, I'm not coming back to the airport." I know that's what I said. I don't know how they took that. But they did send assistance because the fire trucks from the airport came. And you have to come with fire trucks from the airport because they know how to deal with aviation fuel. The normal fire department may not know what the airport fire department knows.